again!
You deserve every bit of this.
Do you remember Resident Evil 7's 21 DLC? Of course you do, because I do. It was a Saw Trap-esque minigame that the player was able to purchase for a solid $20? That's like fifth of my grocery money for the week. Anyways, it took the concept of a simple card game and turned it into a fun, wacky survival game meant for the entire family. It upped the stakes of just regular gambling and allowed you to gamble how much your pain tolerance is able to take. It was a relatively short game mode that was thoroughly enjoyable because you weren't just playing blackjack, you were playing blackjack with cheats. Lucas, by the way, Lucas is the fellow who put you in the saw trap for those who haven't played or seen the DLC, hands the player and the opponent trump cards. Cards that can assist in besting your enemy in the round. These cards can range from allowing you to draw specific cards, increasing bets, decreasing damage, altering whether a player increases or decreases the limit of 21, etc, und so weiter, which added to the excitement of the game. It changed it to less of a game of chance and more of a game of skill and strategy. And chance. It made the game exciting, as you can turn seemingly dead hands into the best hand in existence. This dark twist on by the way I say dark lightly, this dark twist on a well-known card game refreshes it and allows it to draw intrigue and work itself into the question of survival. How far will this go? Who's the guy that I'm fighting? What's his story? Why the hell does Lucas have so many of these TVs, and where did he get an electric execution device? I'm sorry. I had trouble saying that line for some reason. Anyways, my point is it brought an interesting spin on a card game, adding survival elements, a raised stake type beat setting, and supplementary tools to assist the player in gaining the advantage. I just wish there was another game that had similar mechanics. Everyone has heard of Inscryption, and I sure hope you do because it's a really good game. Like, insanely, I love it. Like, it's one of my If you don't know, Inscryption is basically roleplay incarnate within a card game and an escape room. A roguelike card game that takes you, the player, on an infinite loop until you're able to escape this cabin through a variety of puzzles. There's also like an ARG thing in the game, but that's for you to discover, whatever.
I'm the Lucky Carter, and this is another pack opening video.
I told you!
Much like Resident Evil's 21, it takes a card game concept and slaps survival game mechanics, raised stakes settings, and gives you supplementary items to assist you on your journey against an a-hole GM that takes ERP way too seriously. And I love it! Like I said before, this game builds on the idea of the survival card game, as when you game over in the game, within the game, you game over. Also in the game. But then you get put into a card! A big appeal of Inscryption's gameplay loop is the manipulation of cards. Unlike RE7's 21, that's a name, the GM allows you to make cards overpowered via a variety of mechanics in the hub phase, increasing cards' attack or HP via bonfire, slicing two identical cards and stitching them together to increase their combat capabilities, and performing a sacrifice of a card to make another card inherited abilities is all part of the course, with very little limits preventing you from wiping this guy's entire lineage from your hard drive. Inscryption itself is a good build on the card game survival genre, adding more mechanics that allow the player to thrive in its environment, allowing them to overcome challenges through their ingenuity. The cards are only limited through luck, the player's adaptability to their given set, and how they're able to alter their stats via a variety of situations. The downside is, you can be totally broken and completely suck the fun out of the tense game of life and being jammed into a card situation. Once you cross that border of becoming stronger than the GM, then the game drops its appeal from the stakes that are supposed to be at play. I'm not saying the game is bad for allowing the player to do this, it's just something that the player can do and break the tension built in the game. It's a horror game after all. Tension is important to build atmosphere and setting, which are major contributors to how horror scares the player. This is the effect of having cards being carried over from each gameplay loop that allow this issue to happen most of the time. Remember when I said you can be put into a card? That card is playable after it's been created, and uses stats from cards drawn from the player's deck for the run. Each stat has the option to be inherited from 3 random cards from the current deck of the player, that the player can choose from. Sometimes the player can get bad draws and ends up with a terrible player card. Or they can get a no-cost card that can either have insane HP, attack, or attributes. If the player picks up this card on their next run, then they have something that can make the game a cakewalk. Now, I can't speak for RE's 21 as I've never played it, but it doesn't seem to have this carryover issue as each game is its own isolated loop. Even if one brings trump cards over to the next game in its survival mode, the best ones are rare and one-time use, only being used if the player needs to clutch the round. Furthermore, survival enemies have their own unique trump cards that keep the player on their toes, keeping tension within the gameplay loop. The only issue the game presents itself with is that it can be pretty predictable before the winner of the round is revealed. I'll have Lucas explain why this is so.
Okay, Hoffman. You're next. These cards are numbered 1 to 11. No doubles, and you share the same deck.
So a player can just count the cards. 11 cards in total, minus the 2 given to both players, leaves 7 cards remaining. The player knows what's in their hand, and what's in their opponent's hand minus 1. In relation, there will be a lot of times when you will know 100% that you have lost. Past 21 with no trump card to put you back in the game? Lost. Opponent plays draw X trump card, maybe a perfect draw with no counter trump card? Most likely a loss. The player can figure out their round is a loss due to the limited trump cards given out per round, and through counting cards. Therefore, tension is lost even with the trump card mechanic, as it can be so predictable a lot of the time. So, how would the card game survival genre capture tension at all times and also keep the player grounded to prevent the player from overpowering the opponent? I wish there was— you can figure out where I'm going with this. You wake up in a grimy club washroom, filled with pill bottles and probably several diseases. Afraid is marked on one of the sink mirrors. Subtle. You follow the blaring music, kicking the door onto the scaffolding where a lone guy smokes his cigarette. The party seems to be coming from down below, as lights flash in a rhythmic fashion to the steady beat of the music. With no way to go but forward, you kick the second door to find a gambling table with a ring, surrounded by wires, stereos, massive stage lights, and other general objects. Out from the darkness approaches 2 disconnected hands, followed by an odd, vaguely human face.
Please sign the waiver.
You, as a player, are now stuck playing Russian roulette, but with a shotgun. The first round is simple. This is the only part of the game that is solely luck and observation. With the power of probability and logical thinking, you can surpass this with little to no issue. To the right, you can see yours and the dealer's health bar signified by charges. So if you happen to accidentally catch a bullet, as long as you have charges, the defibrillator will bring your soul back from the grave. But if you happen to be insanely unlucky, the man we saw earlier will defib you and allow you to try your luck once again. He also happens to know your name. Perhaps he knows more than we initially thought, but that's theories for another time. Besting the dealer brings you to stage 2.
Boom. Let's make this a little more interesting. Another round.
Introducing the item system. Like a magician, you can pull out a variety of items out from the dealer's item box, from beers, handsaws, cigarettes. Another time. Let me go through what each item does really quick. Beer. Like a frat boy, you chug an entire can of beer to rack the shotgun, allowing you to see what would have been shot, dwindling the options within the shotgun and allowing you to make smarter decisions. Cigarette takes the edge off. Only smoke 1 and throw the rest out to increase the number of charges to your health bar by 1. Remember, you can only go as high as the number of charges you were given at the beginning of the round. Handsaw. Turn the shotgun into a sawed-off shotgun. Doubles the damage done by live rounds. But I'm not sure if sawing off the barrel would actually hurt more than a regular barrel. I mean, buckshot is buckshot. Handcuffs. Get a bit frisky and cuff up your opponent. Skips their next turn until they break free. Looks like the dealer is more than willing while the player is...
You've gotta be shitting me!
Magnifying glass. Look into the chamber by... But why? This round, you're allowed to take 2 random items out of the box, and after each consequential round, up to 8 items total. Now the game is about observation, logical thinking, and luck. How will you, as a player, make the most optimal play with what items you have, tipping probability in your favor? This makes the game very similar to the other 2 I mentioned mechanic-wise, but also the board is always changing. Because not only you get 2 random items that greatly impact odds of survival, but the dealer does too from the same pot, as to make it even across the field. With the field always changing, you need to be thinking, how do I guarantee that he is not able to hurt me, if not minimize my damage with the items that I have, and also prevent them from using their items to their fullest. Because of this, it's an improvement on the previous 2 games by being able to keep up the tension by having these game-altering items replenished frequently. It even gets rid of the issue that 21 had of predictability, because you can change so much to help or harm your odds. And the release from the tension will not come until the last live round pushes the dealer back into the darkness or makes your screen go black. Furthermore, with the variety of trump cards in 21 with varying strengths, sometimes certain cards have inconsequential effects for the immediate situation. This would mean that if you don't have a card to save you in the immediate situation, it contributes to the predictability issue presented beforehand. In Buckshot Roulette, most items contribute to adjusting the scale of probability in your favor. Handcuffs indirectly increases the chance of hitting your opponent with a live shot, since there is no reason not to shoot at them if their turn is skipped. Beer adjusts the ratio of lives to blanks by racking the shotgun. Magnifying glass allows you to make logical moves instead of assumptions based on what you saw, adjusting luck in your favor. Handsaw increases the chance of winning the game as a whole by dealing double damage and indirectly negating a single cigarette. And on the other side, cigarettes increases charges, therefore increasing chances of winning the game as a whole. One can argue that raising bets in 21 is similar in mechanics to the sawed-off shotgun and the shield to cigarettes, therefore making this argument invalid. But this simply isn't the case, as the health system works differently in each game. 21's is a possibility of being hit by X amount, while Buckshot Roulette is an instant gratification for each action, therefore making each item count as the player uses it. In 21, bets stack up for a chance to hit. If both players draw, then the raises are negated, leaving both players unharmed for the current round. Even if raises increase the tension of the game, it loses its tension completely if the player has already predicted the outcome of the round through the previously mentioned method of counting cards. Counting shells is different in this game, as long as there's still a live round mixed in with blanks. The outcome remains unknown to both of you, always keeping the player in a high state of tension. That is the key word. Unknown. You will never know who will get the live round until it is shot, or if you have a magnifying glass. For 21, you can assume pretty easily. The draw X cards can't be activated if the card is already on the table. Play the card, but the card doesn't come out of the deck and you can't see it? Guess where it is? It's the hidden card your opponent has. By using context clues of the opponent's used trump cards and what cards are on the board, the suspense does not sustain, as you can probably guess what their hidden card is. There are a variety of cards that can help you deduct what your opponent's last card is, and as good as that may be, with very little cards in the deck, the results suffer from predictability, something that Buckshot Roulette suffers much less from. The only example of predictability that comes to mind is when the player is cuffed and there's 2 rounds with a live among them, which at that point the player should have attempted to avoid the situation by prematurely ending their turn, allowing the dealer to have more shells to work with. Once you deplete the dealer's health once more, you can reach the final round, signified on the dashboard by a skull.
Finally. No.
At long last, we arrive at the final showdown. No more defibrillators, no more blood transfusions. Now, me and you, we are dancing on the edge of life and death.
Shit!
Four items each. You
dealer gets all riled up, not even reading out the number of lives and blanks in the tube, as you should now be familiar with the mechanics at this point. The only change to this round is that you can now draw 4 random items instead of 2 at the start of each new round, building your arsenal quickly and opening up plenty of possibilities of comboing items each round. Furthermore, there are 2 cracked charges on either side of the dash. If either player enters that region, their wires are cut by the machine that just rose from the ground, giving no more chances to revive once they're shot one last time. Cigarettes cannot bring you back from this state, as the line has already been cut. This is where you can get one of 2 endings. Lose the last round and...
Where am I?
Welcome to heaven. Heaven? But there's ginormous spikes erected from the ground accompanied by a heavy flurry of unknown objects falling behind the player. And an all-consuming light in the sky. There's no way we can tell that this is heaven. Of anything, this is purgatory. As there's no clear indication of what this place is through imagery alone, one would have to turn to the soundtrack for help. The track that plays in the background is called You Are an Angel, confirming this theory. The tracks tend to be labeled specifically to reference something happening in the current scene. Blank Shell is the title theme, setting up the premise of using blank shells for the game. General release refers to the general release of liability form. Before every load is what the dealer says when introducing the item system. Socket calibration refers to the machine that rises from the ground in the final game. Monochrome LCD is when either player's health has no more charges and their lines are cut off, making the screen monochrome. 70k refers to the amount of money won if the player runs through a perfect game. And finally, You Are an Angel, which only happens if the player was permitted into heaven. Continuing on, if the player walks through the gates, not like they have much of a choice, they begin to float into the sky, being consumed by the light. This is the bad ending, and if you hit retry,
Is this... Did you miss me?
I better not see you again.
you're back where you started, with all the progress you've made thus far, and a disdain comment from the dealer. Clearly, this was not supposed to happen in their eyes, or lack thereof, meaning the player is somewhat of an anomaly in this game. But no matter how much the dealer may hate their opponent, there's nothing they're able to do, only threatening them and allowing them a second chance. So, let's try this again.
Let us finish this.
2 red lights resembling eyes beam from the darkness that the dealer came from, and was sent back to once again. The player gets their reward, depending on how well they performed their entire run. You defeated the evil, but have you really? The player knows that they can hurt the dealer as his face deforms after the first time they've shot it, and signified from the blood after landing final blows. But unlike the player, they don't require a defib to get back up from death. So are they truly gone? The end shows that the player drives off with their prize money, along with the shotgun used throughout the game. And this forcibly shuts the game down. Now, I'm not saying that Buckshot Roulette is a way better game than Inscryption or RE21, but it's a prime example of how to make the player feel tension almost always. I didn't even mention how the music in this game enhances the experience as a whole, setting the mood with electronic and rhythmic beats that perfectly accompany the setting and make one feel that every decision makes an impact. It's diegetic too, which is nice setting up the setting of the club. Furthermore, it leaves the player asking questions about the universe this world is set in, through its environmental storytelling and general story prompts. What place is this, and why is it so grimy? Who is the dealer? Who is the guy on the scaffolding, and how does he know your name? What powers allow the shotgun to rebuild itself after being sawed off? Is the death screen really heaven? And most of all, why did God play this game, and how did he lose? So many questions are left unanswered and may never be answered. It can be built on, but most is left to interpretation, allowing the player to make assumptions themselves and invest themselves in the world. That is the brilliance of Buckshot Roulette. Fuck.